Hello and welcome to the Penno Channel. It's different scenery today, but I thought I need to jump on here and talk about a situation that could develop with Aston Villa this January window. But before we start, if you could like, subscribe, and really let me know your thoughts in the comment section regarding this one, because it's a big one. Now, Sky Sports News yesterday reported that potentially two clubs are looking to acquire Douglas Luiz on an initial loan and potentially an obligation to buy within the summer, the loan period being of 6 months. Now, that sparked rumours across left, right and centre. Who are these clubs? I think one of those is potentially Man City. They're after midfielders, obviously. We've seen how they performed this season. And Douglas Luiz, having come through their academy, but not officially starting a game for the first team, they could look to re-sign him. But one team that it could potentially be is Aston Villa. Now, I've had a think about this and, could we go back for Douglas Luiz? Is there room for Douglas Luiz to be part of our midfield now? What would he offer going forward? Because his time at Juventus hasn't worked out, has he? We sold him in the summer as part of the deal, including Inian Jr. and Enzo Barrenechea, two players who are now out on loan. And for Douglas Luiz, he went to Juventus at a time where they'd employed a new manager in Thiago Motta. And it hasn't worked out. He's found himself not playing many minutes. They signed Kefram Turam. They signed Cooper Miners as well within that summer. And they've been getting more opportunities within this season. He's also had a bit of an injury within that time. So, yeah, Douglas Luiz, it has not worked out at all. He was part of that transfer where Alisha Lehmann also left Villa Women's and went across to Juventus Women's as well. And had a whole change of life, different culture. And it really hasn't worked out for him. Now, these links of interest from other clubs don't surprise me. We saw the impact he had last season especially. He was integral in our push for getting into Champions League, into the top four. And he was a key, very, very key part of that with his goals, his assists, his big game performances, playing alongside Boubacar Kamara for the first half of the season. They were both exceptional. And we had big victories within that period, over Arsenal, Man City. And yeah, we really were at a point at the halfway stage last year where we had the opportunity to go top of the league, albeit we drew to Sheffield United. But that's how good we were last year, that first half of that season. And he was integral in that point. Form dropped off a little bit second half of the season, but there were still some good performances within that, most notably the Nottingham Forest home game. And we all know what Douglas Luiz is about. So could we see Villa re-sign Douglas Luiz on loan and potentially sign him on a permanent deal? Now, I remember there was comments from Monchi after the sale had gone through. I think it was after the window was closed. He did an interview in regard to that, and Douglas Luiz was brought up. And Monchi, there was no hard feelings held against him leaving. We know over a period of seasons, Douglas Luiz had attracted interest from Arsenal. There was a big one. At one point under Gerrard, we somehow managed to get him to re-sign a new deal. I don't know how that took place. And, Dougie he came to Villa in 2019 as part of the whole rebuild and reshuffle we had when we got promoted to the Premier League. He was one of our first signings. I think there was a turnover of 14 players in that point, because a number of the players we had to get rid of because they were either loans or they were coming towards the end of their contracts, most notably Tammy, Twanzebe, Glenn Whelan, Jedinak, etc. So he came as part of that. That overhaul included players like Trezeguet, Konza, Wesley. There were some names within that overhaul. And Dougie was here for a period of 4.5 years? 4 years. 5 years actually, yeah. So it's a long time he was at the club. Always gave his all. I remember the time, in the first season when we nearly got relegated, and after COVID had taken place and the season was restarted, I can never forget the impact Dougie had. I think Grealish gets a lot stated for, but Douglas Luiz was probably my best player in that period of time, and he was integral. He was playing more as an orthodox six. He was playing that holding role under Dean Smith. And then we saw it develop over the time with, where he was out of favour with Steven Gerrard, which Gerrard got a lot of things wrong with that side. And then under Unai Emery, he was given the licence to play a role where he was further forward. And with Boubacar Kamara being alongside him, that gave us a security in midfield where Dougie could push forward, he could get in the box, he could create higher up the pitch, and it really worked. So yeah, as I said, Monchi had an interview and he basically stated that he'd be more than happy to re-sign Douglas Luiz if there was an opportunity to do so. He would be happy to go after him. Now, I don't know how much truth there is in those comments, where they're passing comments just to say, like, look, he left amicably, the relationship's still good, or if there's real interest or intent to re-sign Douglas Luiz, having already signed, Amadou Onana, albeit not a direct replacement for Douglas Luiz, but he was another midfield addition in this summer. I get the gist, and I think the thought process was when we signed Yuri Tillemans on a free the season before that was, at some point, Douglas Luiz, in terms of the PSR complications, he may be one of the players that would be used to address those, and that was the case in the end of that. But are we in a position now where we could re-sign Douglas Luiz for an initial loan and potentially sign him back on a permanent deal? Now, it'd be interesting to see how that does develop in that regard. But personally, would I take Douglas Luiz back? Yeah, because I think he's a quality player. But that's in isolation. Do I think we need Douglas Luiz at this moment in time? And is there other areas of the squad that we could potentially strengthen before we go for a player like Douglas Luiz? I think yes as well. The loans could be used to strengthen other areas, albeit, defence being the big one. I think Pau Torres getting injured. If we were to get rid of Diego Carlos, which is reports of that potentially happening, then I think defence is a huge area we need to strengthen, especially at centre-back and the right-back position. And then in, the winger options as well, we've seen developments of Philogene possibly going to Everton. If we're looking to get rid of Philogene, we already sold Moussa Diaby in the summer. And Philogene, was not the direct replacement, but he was the winger option that was brought in. So if we were to lose him, we definitely need wingers. I mean, Daniel Marlin's coming in as well. He's going to be the option for the second striker role, but with McGinn having this hamstring injury when he plays out wide, Ramsey, we can't rely on him for fitness at the moment. Bailey hasn't really fired this season. Great that he got a goal in the last game, but he hasn't been firing. So who do we rely on? Do we need additions in out wide as well? I think we do. So if you're looking at out wide and in defence, there's about four positions there that we could do with strengthening before strengthening the middle of the pitch. We signed Ross Barkley for $5 million. I think that's been a great transfer. Amadou Onana came in as well, already having Tielemans and Boubacar Kamara, who now Boubacar Kamara's fully integrated back into the squad after his injury. Where does he fit in? With that as well, John McGinn can fill into that area of the pitch as well. And then you have Enzo Barrenechea, who's out on loan. So I don't think it's us that are one of the clubs that are looking at him. I'd be shocked and surprised if it was. But would I be up for it? Yeah, I would, because I think he's an outstanding player and he knows the club so well. And as I said, I think he left the club amicably. I think for him to sign the contract back then at that point, I thought that was a huge deal, considering the position we were in. We were mid-table, lower half of the table. Gerrard was hardly playing him at that point as well. And yeah, the way we somehow managed to get him to sign a new deal at that point was a big factor, and it led to him improving his game, developing his game, playing under a manager who understood the roles he required, and the manager that really tested him. We saw Unai and Dougie. I think at points they did come to blows. I think that did happen. Whether it's to the level that's been reported, who's to say? But I think they did have their differences at times. But I think that was just for the better of the club, in terms of they both wanted to prove. Unai was demanding of Dougie, and Dougie possibly thought he was in the right with those discussions as well. But I think Unai took Douglas Luiz's game to a new level, and Douglas Luiz also took his game to a new level as well when he was given the opportunity to play further forward within our system. So yeah, that's a huge transfer news. We'll see how that one develops for sure. But Douglas Luiz back to Aston Villa. What are your guys' thoughts? Would you be up for that? Do you think he's needed? Can we strengthen in other areas? Really let me know your comments on this one, because I'm really interested to see what other Villa fans' opinions are of this, and if it develops. For that I've said on this regard, might well be that Villa aren't one of the clubs, but I think there's another couple of other sources that have stated that it's potentially Villa interested as well. But yeah, interesting story, and obviously it hasn't worked for him at Juventus. It's not at all. It doesn't seem as if he's part of Thiago Motta's plans. Because when he has been available, he's been getting limited minutes, and it's for the outlay that they made, and it's quite significant considering the constraints Juventus operate under. He's got hardly any minutes, and that has had a minimal impact there. And to think that when the Champions League draw was made and we drew Juventus, we were all expecting to see Dougie play against us in that game. Obviously, he was injured at that point, but I don't know if he would have even been starting in that game, or I don't think he would have. And if he was on the bench, he would have got limited minutes. So yeah, this is an interesting one. It really is. One more thing I like to say is about Douglas Luiz playing in the Premier League. After all the time and the bid and what happened in the summer and him going, I was kind of content with the fact that I wouldn't have to watch him play for another side in the Premier League. Now, if he doesn't come back to Villa, yeah, that's a bit mad that after only 6 months, he possibly will be lining up for a team that isn't Villa in the Premier League as well. So that will be a weird one to see. But, you know, football moves fast and things change. And obviously with Douglas Luiz and everything around that, things have moved extremely quickly. And yeah, I think there's a really good chance that he does move this window on loan anyway. But yeah, thank you for joining me. Just wanted to get my thoughts out across that. And also, I want you guys to let me know your thoughts in the comments, so please do. As always, if you could like, subscribe as well. And also, if you'd like to become a member, there's a link in the description below. So if you'd like to do that, it would be really appreciated. But yeah, thank you all for joining me. Up the Villa as always. And these updates will continue. So make sure to switch on the notification bell and make sure you're aware of that. I'll see you on the next one. Up the Villa.